Immigration is a hot topic in the United States today. We can see this division of opinions distinctly with the migrant caravan reaching the Mexico-US border in recent weeks. Economic and physical insecurities have caused mass migration to the US border, and millions have tried to enter the US illegally. Oftentimes, in discussions about immigration in the US, people speak in very general terms about immigrants, lumping them into one big category. I want to focus on one specific group of Mexicans who have turned to migration in the last 25 years: rural corn farmers. I'd like to introduce you to Felipa Martinez. She's an indigenous corn farmer to the Oaxaca region of Mexico. She is a subsistence farmer that sells her excess corn. We can see how proud she is of her work while holding part of her harvest for the year. However, she is one of many small rural farmers in Mexico that have been negatively affected by the North American Free Trade Agreement of 1994. You can find out more information on specific ways that NAFTA has affected these farmers in my paper titled NAFTA's Effect on Small-Scale Mexican Corn Farmers, which can be made available upon request to the email listed on the bottom of the screen. I'll briefly discuss those issues here and how it relates to the present immigration issues between the US and Mexico. In short, as NAFTA was passed, the US, Canada, and Mexico agreed to remove import and export tariffs between the countries to promote trade. Mexico in particular had hoped this would allow for them to catch up in technology and manufacturing businesses. Some of these businesses from the US would move to Mexico for cheaper labor along the border. This did lead to a boost in the manufacturing economy, but it came at a cost to farming. According to Spanish economist Jorge Martinez Vasquez, exports from manufacturing went from representing 76% of total imports in 1991 to representing 91% in 1998. As the Mexican government emphasized manufacturing, they neglected the agriculture industry, especially corn farmers. The free market allowed for corn from the United States, which was significantly cheaper than the indigenous corn because of subsidies, to flood the market and decrease corn prices. This is called export dumping. For rural corn farmers, the decreased corn prices had detrimental effects on their livelihood and subsistence farming. This was the response that anthropologist Annalise Richard received from farmers. It's all finished now. The countryside has withered. This shows how hopeless farmers feel about their situation. This has driven thousands of farmers to look to immigration as a way to fix their situation. A Center for Immigration Study report found that 13.4% of all immigrants from Mexico were farmers. These would be farmers directly affected by NAFTA policies. I would argue that these facts should influence the general opinions on immigration within the U.S., as our government has had a significant contribution to the problems forcing immigration to take place. Possibly distributing more green cards to poor farmers would help to mitigate the effects of NAFTA so that they can make a livelihood in the U.S. However, this is not the end-all answer to the problems of immigration. Many people are concerned with potential negative economic effects of immigration in the U.S. In the same study by the Center for Immigration Studies, Stephen Camarota argues that, from available evidence, unskilled Mexican immigrants tend to lower wages for already poor Americans and should not be allowed to enter into the U.S. in large numbers. He states that it would be beneficial for immigrants who do enter the U.S. legally in economic terms. To counter this argument, I would say that this would lead to family separation, as this policy would discriminate against women and children who do not have the necessary education or skill requirements to meet the skilled workers requirement. The U.S. government should not promote policies that separate families. What practical steps can the average American take to help improve the situation for these farmers so they can either more easily immigrate to the U.S. for work or even make enough income to stay in Mexico? There are several organizations that provide legal advice to potential immigrants to the U.S. Church World Service is one of these groups that offers legal support and application for green cards and citizenship in the U.S. These services help people who do not have full knowledge of the immigration system to have professional advice and aid for low costs. I would encourage you to consider donating to this organization to help aid potential immigrants affected by our toxic economic policies. Another possible step you could take to help Mexican farmers in Mexico on a daily basis is to purchase natural Mexican corn products when you do purchase these kinds of products. Large-scale corn producers like Monsanto contribute to the problems of decreased corn prices. I would encourage you to buy these corn products from small Mexican brands like La India Verdena. They use only natural indigenous corn for their products. This helps to support the small-scale farmers most affected by NAFTA. But why should Christians specifically care about the conditions of Mexican farmers? God intended for people to work and to work with reward, not in meaningless, toilsome ways. We can clearly see that in the with Adam and Eve, working the land to take care of it under God's instruction. For rural corn farmers in Mexico, work is without substantial reward. Christians have a duty to improve economic systems to promote flourishing for all people. Theologian Kevin Brown writes, Christians can be actively involved in shaping the regulatory environment and the moral and ethical social conventions that allow for healthier markets. I don't work for any of these organizations I mentioned. I just believe that Americans need to be made more aware of causes for immigration to make their own informed opinions. I hope you can take my recommendations seriously in considering acting on some of the ways we can improve the conditions for rural Mexican corn farmers. Thank you.